Courtney Ortiz, and welcome to the My Camp podcast. You're joining me live here in the Girls HC, where we're just going to talk about camp. And I'm really excited to introduce here today my brand new camp friend, Shawn Ryan. He is the co-founding director of the Young Actors Theater Camp, also known as the Camp YATC. So Shawn, welcome today. Welcome to the Girls HC. Welcome to the My Camp podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. I literally, seeing your background, I literally feel like I'm back at camp right now.
Oh, good. Well, good. That's the vibes. We're putting out those camp vibes. So tell me a little bit about your camp origin story. Did you go to camp as a kid? Like, what brought you here today?
Yeah, well, I actually grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I was the son of, or am the son of a rodeo cowboy as a father and a mother who was a motivational speaker. Wow. So I had a very interesting growing up. I was the only theatrical person in my immediate family, though my grandma had done, like, she'd been an extra in some movies in her hometown and like had big dreams of being a movie star. So when I was growing up, all I wanted to do was be a performer, and I wanted to do it professionally. And I knew that from the time I saw a children's theater production of Winnie the Pooh when I was like 5.5 years old. I saw actors on stage and I was like, that's it, please, I'll do that. Yeah. And my dad and I were at a rodeo for a week in Pocatello, Idaho. And rodeo clowns would come out in between the acts in this, 5,000 person stadium. And they would do these little like vaudeville skits as clowns. And the announcer would sort of like talk through the dialogue and they would just like mime it out and act it out. And they needed someone to play a role in this little skit. And, for them, it was like the tiniest thing. And for me, it was gigantic. So I dressed up. They hid me in like a giant box. They wheeled me out into the arena. Then the box was like lifted upright. No one knew I was in there. And then these two clowns come out, and one is the son-in-law and one is the mother-in-law. And the mother-in-law is robust. She's curvy. She's a big gal. And they said, "We can shrink you." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, you can shrink me." And she goes in the machine. And of course, there's a trap door. We switch positions. I'm 4 foot and I come running out with a purse, banging him on the head with a purse. And I got laughs from 5,000 people. And then that was sort of it. I just sort of started performing every day then, whether people wanted me to or not. And out of college, I did theater all the way through middle, high school, and college. And then out of college, I started emceeing a lot. I would get asked by corporations to be their MC. And I thought, well, now how does this become a job? When I was 23 years old, it all came into fruition when I became one of the co-founding members of Young Actors Theater Camp. And they said, who will be the person that gets on the stage and gives the kids the announcements? And I was like, I definitely can do that. Like, I've been doing that my whole life. So yeah, that's how I got to the start of Camp YATC almost 22 years ago. We'll start our 22nd season this year.
So many thoughts. First of all, I wish I could go production. Let's show that video clip. Like, we had the video clip of you on the rodeo. That would be my dream.
That was 1943. That video didn't exist.
Oh, please. And like, I feel like even though you say you're like the first performer in your family, if your dad was a professional rodeo, I mean, that in itself is an act of performance. And your mom being a motivational speaker, I mean, it was in your blood. Okay. It was definitely a little bit in your blood. So you grew up in Arizona and then in Idaho. I can't imagine, were there a lot of opportunities for people that were interested in acting at that time?
Yeah, it's very funny because we actually, I grew up in Arizona and then we moved to San Francisco when I was 13. And it was through a divorce, and one parent stayed in Arizona and my mom went to California, to San Francisco. And I remember when they presented me with the choice of like, where would you like to live? That it literally had nothing. Both my parents are such amazing humans. I'm still best friends with them to this day. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with like, where are the theater opportunities? And I was like, I'm going to go to the Bay Area, I think, because there's a theater every 10 miles there. It's like Starbucks. It's amazing.
And it's just got to be a completely, totally different way of life. I can imagine. I live in South Florida. I've luckily been to San Francisco once, but I can imagine from growing up in rodeo circuit in Arizona to this whole other, like, it's another world out there too. Must have blown your little actor mind that there were like so many opportunities. And I'm blown away that you were 23 years old when you started Young Actors Theater Camp. So there's no way you can be 20, you're getting ready to celebrate your 22nd birthday this year as a camp. So 23 years old, I'm giving you a high five, man. Your parents, good job, mom and dad. That's really amazing. So what was that conversation like with your other co-founding director when you're like, we need to start, like, there's something missing. Like, what was the need that you felt you needed to fulfill, right? I kind of find in my talking to camps that like some of the best programs were started because there was a definite need in the community for XYZ. And then you feel these programs to meet that need. So tell me a little bit more.
Absolutely. We started because I had been working in a program as an assistant program director. And just by chance, that program director handed over the directorship to me when I was like 21 or 22. And then that program got bought out by a big organization in the Bay Area. And I thought, with my co-founding director, like he just said, we could do this. And I was like, at 23, you think, oh, sure, we could do anything. We literally started with, I think it was $68 on my debit card. And I went to Kinko's. It was called Kinko's then, not FedEx.
I know Kinko's.
And I literally made an 8x10 flyer until the money ran out on the debit card. It spit it out. It was like, no more money. And so I had something like, 250 flyers. And I just went school to school and started talking to people. And the reason that we did it was because what I found as a kid was, especially in the performing arts, two things were happening that to me that didn't look right. One was that people were trying out for the play. And if they had some sort of raw talent, they were pulling them forward and then giving those kids, Maria in The Sound of Music. Well, the rest of us who maybe didn't have the training had to choose between, Nazi number 14 or nun number 32. And it's like, well, how is that going to A, be fun for kids? And B, how is it going to educate kids? Because you would never take a kid who showed interest in soccer. You wouldn't take them right to the soccer store, I'm sure that's what it's called, and get the cleats and the pads and the shorts and the jersey and then drop them on a field. But somehow in the performing arts, we sing well at grandma's birthday. We're on pitch and we have good vibrato and mom's like, you should go audition for Les Mis. And we're like, wait, we missed like 100 steps in between there. And unfortunately, what that does for students, I think, is because they don't have the skill level, unless they get super lucky, they can end up bruising their egos, really hurting their self-confidence, which is, of course, the opposite of what the camp world is about building us up into the biggest and best versions of ourselves. So that was one thing we saw that needed a fix. We needed to be able to sort of combine the worlds of pre-collegiate conservatory with really high-level classes. And the second fix, or the second part of that was marrying it with the camp world so that we could have fun. So we could like take away the pressure. And the second thing we saw going wrong so often was in the performing arts world, a lot of the programs, and this isn't to talk trash about anyone's program. I think every single camp in the world should be explored and is amazing for doing what they do. But a lot of performing arts camps would audition to get in. And, to ask a student to audition to have the opportunity to learn always felt wrong to us. So at Young Actors Theater Camp, we have kids of all levels. We have kids who have never stepped on stage before, and then we have kids who are going to Juilliard next year. I mean, everything in between. And we teach all of the areas so that it's not just musical theater camp, which we love. I freaking love musical theater. But we also teach, we're into acting, dancing. Like you mentioned before, we've got an amazing film program that teaches producing, directing. Like we have kids that do graphic design at camp, because I believe that a life in the arts, if a student wants to explore that opportunity, a life in the arts is more than possible. But what we have to know is that we need to know as many working parts of the arts, in front of the camera, behind, on stage, and off stage, in order to really give students the best opportunity and to help our students turn from performers into artists, which is really what we're about.
As a parent, you're speaking to me. I have 3 kids, 11, 14, and 16. And my 11-year-old has recently shown an interest for theater. We do at my camp, she's very involved in theater. So, you think you're this rock star, and she's been getting involved here, but I'm like, okay, you hear her sing and you're like, okay, well, if this is what she wants to do, she needs the skills. She needs to be taught. She needs to learn how to read music. She needs to learn how to use her voice so that she's not, she's belting so loud and straining that she's not going to damage her vocal cords. And as I'm trying to like better prepare her to do these things, like, I'm like, damn, this is so great. Like you are speaking to me. And then even like my son, who's so into film, these kids as a teenager trying to prepare for college, you need to, well, if you're into film, well, you need to where are your films? So to give kids an opportunity to create like even a little portfolio and show, because you service age, I hate to use the word service, but you serve kids ages 8 to 18. So your oldest campers are even older than what would be considered like a traditional camper age. Sleepaway camps usually age out like 16. So for you to give them that prep, like you said, your campers are going to Juilliard. I mean, there's just so much.
When I think a lot of times, we look at the 8 to 18-year-old range. We're originally 22 years ago, we started at 10. Because our programs are 7, 10, and 21 days, and they stay overnight. It's obviously overnight camp. So when we started, we thought, well, let's just do 10-year-olds because 8 seems so young. Well, there were so many 8 and 9-year-olds that just kept knocking on the door for the first 5 years, like, no, I'm ready. And we were like, let's try it. So our elementary school division makes up about 10% of our camp. And then our middle and high school programs make up about 45% each. And we have, kids from all over the country and even all over the world that come out, because now not only are the teachers of such a level, they all work in the industry. So in some cases, they're quote unquote like famous people.
I mean, do you want to do some name dropping really quick? I was reading your staff list online. So let's name drop. Come on.
It's amazing to see, right? It's amazing to see how many performing artists come back to share their stories, because again, this camp was built on what we wished we had had when we were kids. So the coolest part is we have teachers who work in the industry on, a daily basis who are coming up. So even people that kids don't know, like this summer we had John Walker from Pixar, who is the creator of the Incredibles franchise, literally developed with Brad. And we're all just sitting there like, okay, we don't really know this man yet. We know his work. His talk was, we should have recorded it for TED Talk. It was literally the best talk we've ever had at camp. And we just thought, this is opening kids' minds up to creation and limitless imagination and all these amazing things. But, some of the teachers that kids are like, this person comes to your camp. We've had, in the past, we've had Adina Menzel, we've had Sutton Foster, we've had Darren Criss, Jonathan Groff, Megan Hilty. Every single summer, we've got people that return that are just from Broadway film and TV that you're just like, wow, you're back again. And sometimes even I am sitting in the, I'm sort of play the host of the master classes. And sometimes I'm sitting there staring at someone being like, I can't believe you're here at this camp. And then what I realize is, this is just a choice for not just for me to start the camp, for our guests to decide to take the leap of faith and come out and teach, for our kids to open themselves up to a bigger idea. And certainly for our parents to look, our camp families to look at the program and be like, okay, this is where this is going to happen. They're going to perform, whether it's on stage or off stage, with design or with performance, they're going to perform, but they're going to learn. That's like, we had to take those steps back to really convince people that when you're learning from some of, your heroes, or even getting to know your soon-to-be mentors and soon-to-be heroes, it really just creates such an amazing learning environment. And then you pair it with like, s'mores sing-along and the haunted hike and all that stuff, and you're like, is this euphoria? Like,
you're pitching yourself like, this is a job. Whoa.
Well, I don't know about you, but like people say to me all the time, like, it's so nice what you do. And I'm like, that's very sweet of you to say, but I don't do it to like just help the world. It's also super freaking fun
for you as well. Like, right. Like, I work at a camp too. I go to sleepaway camp with my kids, and, it's the hardest job, but yet it's like, for that time, I don't have to cook, clean, do laundry. It's so, it's an escape. So I can imagine you are soaking up just as much content and inspiration as your campers do. I mean, like you said, you're pinching yourself, living the dream. But you had mentioned that you have 3 programs, 7, 10, and 21 days. Talk to me about those. What's the difference in the 3 programs?
Yeah, so our program breaks down into, we've got spring and fall workshops for students to be able to try. We have our film camp, which happens between December 27th and January 2nd. So it's a week every single year. We just finished it 3 weeks ago. And one of the reasons that I think the film program has gotten so much notoriety is because a lot of the films, I should say, go on to play festivals all over the world. And for the last 5 years, they've played the student showcase. Got to preface it, but it's the student showcase.
Hey.
At the Cannes Film Festival in France. So I know. People are like, is this a camp or a production company? It's both. It's like the most incredible thing to be able to get these real world professional experiences. But again, with no pressure. You're never going to come into a class and hear a dance teacher screaming, again, 5, 6, 7. We just don't do that. We want students to learn in a completely safe and supportive environment so that they just feel inspired. And if you soak up 30 seconds of the dance, you got 30 seconds of the dance, baby, and you're going to go out with that dance captain and you're going to perfect that. And when it comes time to the showcase, you're going to show it. I can't do 2.5 minutes of a dance and I'm 92 years old. You know what I mean? Like, it may never come. And then our summer programming breaks down just by dates, just purely by dates. So we run the same amazing programming, and we have kids, we open July 2nd and we close August 1st. It's a solid 31 days. So some kids come for 31 days, but the majority come for 21 or 10. And then we sort of save our little 7-day, 6-night experience for very brand new first-time campers who just may be a little nervous, a little like, ooh, 6 nights away from home.
Yeah, it's a big deal for those who haven't done. So what's your facility like? Do you have your own facility, or since it's just for 31 days, or do you rent a space? What's that like?
Yeah, we do have a permanent home, but we are renters.
Okay.
We're in the town of Ben Lomond, at a beautiful campus. We've been there for 11 years. So you drive in and we have the big pool and the volleyball court and the baseball. I always say the baseball court and the basketball diamond because I have no idea about either of those things.
Sports.
Yes, exactly. And then you get up into the camp and we've got tons of indoor spaces to teach in so that we can utilize those during the winter time. Although East Coasters are probably laughing at me. Cold for us is 55 degrees.
I'm in South Florida, so we speak the same language.
We're the same, yeah. And then in summertime, there are just beautiful redwood trees. We create all these outdoor teaching spaces. We have like 4 different amphitheaters, folding chairs galore. So kids just sort of, we have a very small camp. Considering, I know a lot of camps get pretty big. We hold it, we cap it at 125 per camp. So it's small, and it's 50 full-time staff members. So it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio. And that for the arts is really important because we want students to feel like they have a lot of one-on-one time. So for example, if you go to your singing class with your singing teacher, and you get through that 90-minute class as a group and you just loved it, we have the opportunity at our camp to be able to offer them one-on-one lessons. So they can just say like, hey, after lunch today, are you free from 1 to 3? And we, of course, create our schedule for our kids. We want everyone to have a guide. But we also allow our students to come to us and say like, loved hip hop dance. However, it's not working for me. Like, it's just not my thing. I'm loving screenwriting. Could I go back to screenwriting this afternoon? Yes. Oh my gosh, there's no said curriculum. This is about you getting out of camp what you want to get out of camp. So
is there a end of camp production? Do you do a play at the end, or is it really just focusing on individual skills? How do you showcase the end of the summer or the end of the session?
We do exactly what you just said. Instead of doing a show, we do a showcase. So we have 3 different tracks that students choose from. There's an acting track that encompasses everything from classical theater to scene study to audition technique to monologue, a little bit of singing for our actors, breaking down the song so you learn how a character would sing a song rather than a singer would sing a song. And then our second track is musical theater, everything from obviously strong voice, dance, acting, improvisation, auditioning technique again. And then our third track is the creative track, and you get to do directing, producing, writing, all sorts of design. So from set to lighting, to makeup, to wigs, which is like one of my favorite classes. When
Oh.
kids learn how to style wigs, they're just like, what is happening here? Oh, amazing. And that designer track, the creative track, is really something that we find that not a lot of people do. We tend to forget as performers about the people that run the spotlight, but that is a really, really hard skill. If you ever come to our camp, like we have this amazing drag night one night where everyone gets in drag and we do RuPaul's Drag Race show. It's amazing. And the spot operator by the end is just like sweating bullets with like gloves on, and we're like, whoa, that's harder than what the drag queens are doing up there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great to give these kids, they, I think, grow up, thinking about having a job in the entertainment world, and I'm an actor, I'm a singer, I'm this, where like you're showing them that there's so much career opportunity outside of what we think. How many people does it take to play the Music Man in New York that just closed, right? Like from the designer to the graphic designer to do your stuff, like it's a million different jobs to create that. You don't necessarily have to be, Marion the librarian to
Yes, yeah. And the other thing
in theater.
absolutely. And one of the things that we talk a lot about at camp, and a lot of our Broadway stars, actually, it was one of our Broadway stars that sort of brought this to our minds in the beginning, is that it's awesome if you get to Broadway. One of our campers, Ariel Stachel, just won the Tony Award 3 years ago. He went to NYU and in the band's visit did this amazing performance, and we're like, oh my gosh, we have a Tony Award winner now. But the coolest part is the performing arts can be a job no matter what level the world associates you making it to. So everyone thinks, like an award or a lead in a show, or those are awesome cherries on the icing on the cake. But as artists, we can build the cake every single day on our own.
Right.
And if someone chooses to buy it and take a bite, awesome. But if not, you make a cake every single day. You know what I mean? Like you're continuing to put the art forward so that it doesn't necessarily just come down to like, oh, did I make it on Broadway or did I make it in film or TV?
Right. So are you in Northern California or Southern California? Where exactly are you located?
So our camp is in Northern California in the Santa Cruz Mountains, a little town called Ben Lomond, just about 7 miles from Santa Cruz. Adorable. Our offices are actually located in West Hollywood, California, because we all, like I said, work in the industry. So the rest of the year that I'm not a camp director, I work in the office 2 or 3 days a week. And then I'm an actor and director and writer in Los Angeles. So I juggle a lot of hats. But the cool thing is the two worlds sort of married together. For example, like just before COVID, the year before COVID, I wrote a musical with my writing partner for middle school and high school kids. And then we ended up doing that at camp and getting to sort of workshop it. Ended up
I saw that on your website. What was it called?
It's called Hell on Earth, a new musical about middle school. Because I don't know about for the rest of you all, but middle school was the absolute hardest time in my life. Thank goodness there wasn't technology then. There was technology. We had lights, children.
Running water.
Right. But I mean, like, no social medias or anything in 1990. So it was just so great to be able to run home and not have the world follow me. And that's truly when I started to find theater in a bigger and better way. And when I showed up to that first rehearsal of Peter Pan at Chandler Children's Theater, I found 40 other me's. Right. And that was, to me, that blew my mind, because I was just like, even though there were other me's at my school, they weren't comfortable to be themselves. So I just couldn't find them. And when we started camp, the number one rule that we said to our campers is you must create a safe and supportive environment for one another. We don't have bullying, but we even go as far as to not have cliques. We tell kids to be super careful with sarcasm, like, let's just be in the best possible versions of ourselves that we could be for these 7, 10, or 21 days. And I don't know about y'all, but sometimes parents will come pick up at the end and they'll be like, how was he? And I'm like, he's an angel. Yeah. And they're like, no, that's my kid. I'm like, oh no, we know he's an angel. Because when we're granted the opportunity to be the best versions of ourselves, 99.9% of the time we rise to that occasion, and that's really what I think is so amazing about camp, is giving kids a chance to learn and to have fun, but to find out who they are, which is just
It really like, wow. I just like, I'm just so blown away. I want to talk to you about like your own stuff and your own directing and your own projects. But so do you, I know you said your program is located there, in California. Do you have any plans to grow it, or any outside of California? Do you travel, you taking kids to the theater to New York? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we do. We're actually leaving in just a month. We take a performing group to New York every year. And they see 3 Broadway shows. They get to perform on a stage. It's really fun. We do master classes and tours and stuff. So because I remember when I wanted to go to college in New York, I remember my first trip to New York in high school was just transformative. It was really, and if I had had, a 6'4" gay man, taking me through and being like, let me introduce you to Sutton Foster,
Right.
it would have been a whole different experience. So we just really wanted our kids to have those real world experiences as well. We do stick to our campus in California because we find that, we have kids from France, from Brazil, from China, all over the world, and certainly all over the US. It's super easy to get to our camp. So you fly into the Bay Area and you're at camp in like 37 minutes. So it's real simple. We have our own shuttle, and we've got kids that, I think they come back over and over. We have about an 85% return rate right now. And they come back over and over because I think it's unlike anything else in that it is really a pre-collegiate level of classes and teachers and mentorship. It doesn't end at camp. The mentorship goes on forever and ever. And our little community has grown to the place of where our associate director at Young Actors Theater Camp is now 30. She doesn't mind me saying, almost 31. And she was a camper when she was 14, and she's been with the program for almost 17 years now. And that's just one. Most people have been there for 5, 10 plus years. So
There's a lot to be said for that program. I don't know if I took this from the video or if you said it earlier, but 90% of your staff is ex-campers. Like, that's amazing that first of all, nobody works as hard as an ex-camper. Nobody. All right. Number one. And number two, that staffing is difficult, and to be able to, wow, 98%, like, high five to you again. Like, that's a lot, says a lot to be said for your program, for you as a director, as a boss, to have them come back and continue to be able to inspire minds. But I would like, can you just tell me about like a little bit of your projects that you do in the off season in the winter?
Yeah, well, most of them all sort of flow in to the same world that I run as a camp director, which is, like I said, the musical that we wrote 4.5 years ago. It ended up going to New York and having a showcase, and the Tony and Emmy award-winning actress Laurie Metcalf decided to step in and help us and perform with us. Like, literally all the little worlds come in. So the first film that I wrote and directed is called Charlie, and it's an R-rated film. It's, I have this career and this career, but it's a lovely, heartwarming story, and it came from me sitting in a class at camp, just watching the class, and the acting teacher had said, if there's a role that you haven't gotten to play yet, you should create it. And I'm like, I wonder if the kids will do this. And then I was like, I wonder if I'll do this. And I think I was 33 at the time. I'm almost 45 now. And at 33, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I left the class and I went to my cabin and I started penning this movie, this idea in my head, because I, in television and film, had always played the gay best friend. So, and I loved it. I've studied the role my whole life, so I'm real good at it. But, like, I was on a TV show called Famous in Love with Bella Thorne, where I played her gay best friend. And literally every single day on the Warner Brothers lot. Loved it. Warner Brothers, if you're listening, please, another job. Love it. Love the money. Love the work. But I was going back to a director's chair, I wasn't the director, but they're called director's chairs on that set. And I would sit and I would wait. And then they would say, okay, Shawn, we're ready for you. And I'd go and we'd do our scene. And I'd say things like, girl, he really likes you. Right. And they'd say, cut, Shawn, thank you. And I'd be like, cool. So my world.
There's more to me than that. There's more to Shawn.
Let's create. So that first film that I created ended up going to the Cannes Film Festival. It got distribution and then it got bought by Amazon. And that was all within like a 4-month period of releasing. So I was like, wait, is it this easy? Like, what? So now when I go back to the kids, I just talk about, like we said before, you can bake a cake every day. painters do not wait for some, I mean, commissioned painters do, but painters who are artists get up every day and paint. Dancers get up every day and dance. Somehow, actors, singers, some creatives, writers wait. And one of the things that we really help our kids understand, because of course, parents at home are like, it would be great if my kid could learn the skill, but we can't get them to practice piano every day. So we really help our kids find the passion for the practice, find the passion for the craft.
It's that book, not The Art of War, The War of Art, that talks about real artists, writers. They write every day, even if it's garbage. You're writing every day, you're practicing every day, 5 minutes. I'm a photographer too, and I should be shooting every day, and you don't, because it becomes work. Now it's work, but really so to be able to do it every day. I feel like I've lost track, but yeah, I thought of the art, the war of art, and you've got to practice and do it.
And camp is really, this camp has been my teacher as well. It was my film school. It was my education. Like, I don't have an education background. I studied it. And of course, I worked in it in the performing arts, but I learned how to teach. I learned curriculums. I learned, to talk to students about what they needed and what they wanted. Because I think so often too, we'll see one camper get up at camp on like day 2 or 3. For example, like one of our campers, this is such a funny story. We did karaoke one night. I think it was night 2 or 3 of camp. It was right in the beginning. And this amazing camper got up to sing. Well, she had won first place in the Philippines version of The Voice. So, right. So she's a winner of The Voice. And she gets up at camp karaoke and sings this song. And you can see every kid around going, I'm gonna go scratch my name off the list. I don't think I came with the skill level. But what we help our students understand then is we ask that kid, how many hours a week do you study voice? And she's like, I sing close to 15 hours a week, but I study probably 10. And we're like, kids, how many do you do? And they're like, I had a voice lesson 6 months ago.
In the car. I sang with Taylor Swift on the way here. Right.
Exactly. So we really just help our kids understand, like, it is a skill, it can be learned. And for parents, I think it's a challenge. And I commend parents so much. And I tell kids, continue to send your love to the parents, because those are your executive producers. And if they don't see you, raising the bar each time, learning a little more, it doesn't have to do with the final performance. It has to do with after each time you perform, whether it's on stage or off, we ask these questions at camp. So what worked, what didn't, and why? Right. Let's evaluate it real quick in a safe way. Like, okay, so I went up on that line. Why? Because I didn't memorize the monologue until 2 days ago. Right. Cool. So what are you going to do next time? I'm going to memorize the monologue 3 weeks ahead of time so that it's a part of my whole body, so that I don't even have to think about the lines, the way that we can all say the Pledge of Allegiance or sing Jingle Bells. It's part of our instrument. Right.
So what's next for Camp YATC, Young Actors Theater Camp? What's on the horizon, your goals for 2023 and beyond?
Oh my gosh, we are probably in our most exciting year, because as many camps, know, we just barely made it back from COVID. And we're so sorry to all of our camp directors and camp owners who had to shutter completely after COVID. We barely made it. With the support of our family and friends, we were able to pull out 2021. We had our first summer back. And 2022, we grew another like 10%. In 2023, we're set to have 100% of our numbers again, which is so exciting and so needed as an arts organization. And we have the biggest and best summer ever. We've got, like I said, 7 different summer programs that you can choose from, with all your favorite masterclass teachers. Everyone is excited to come back and just work together again. We're also introducing some amazing weekend workshops. So Friday afternoons to Sunday evenings. And we even have kids that fly in for those, which is awesome. And we're announcing, other than our Dungeons and Dragons, our writers retreat, and our audition technique, we're also announcing our very first Art of Drag workshop. It's a big time in our nation's history, and there's some weird stuff going on right now where people are, talking about drag queens being bad. For those of you that don't know, drag was a term that was invented by William Shakespeare that stood for dressed as girl. So it was simply a stage direction. And it has
all
turned
the actors during that time were men, correct? Like during Shakespeare's time. So if you were a female, if you were playing a female role, you were dressed
you
as
were
a girl.
dressed
You were
as
in
girl.
drag.
You were,
Yeah.
you were drag. So we found that being able to have our students have complete creativity and expansive thought. You know, we don't teach sexuality, obviously. No camp would. We don't teach gender identity. No camp would. But we are the complete, inclusive, safe community for your camper. We have a huge LGBTQIA plus community. So many campers that identify as trans and non-binary. It's for you. This place is for everyone, quite literally. And so we said, let's really specify and do a weekend workshop because you know, at camp, we get to have a really fun sort of like 4 to 6 hour workshop one day in the art of drag. But we didn't really, you know, kids just want more and more and more, as you know, like anytime you go to camp, that's the best thing to say. Like, could we schedule a second session of Capture the Flag? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I love that you all love this so much. This is so much fun. So that's another thing that's coming up this year. And then of course, we'll start touring to festivals with our films that we just created. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get to go back to France in May, just before camp starts. Yeah, we do a big trip to France. It's
darn, you know, right in prep time, you gotta like,
crazy. Parents just look at us like we're absolutely insane. I should say, we have a really wonderful scholarship program. We always offer financial aid. We've never had to turn a child away for the inability to pay. And we also have a great Earn Your Way to Camp program where even families that don't necessarily need the financial aid, I always tell families it gives your camper a stronger sense of ownership and a stronger summer camp experience if they go after, you know, earning some of their tuition, whether it's through our fundraiser or whether it's just from mowing lawns and babysitting. When they get to camp, they're like, I earned this. Like, this is part of earned. Yeah, big deal.
Oh my gosh, Shawn, I cannot thank you enough. I am so excited to continue. We are camp friends now. I'm gonna make sure to follow you on Instagram. I'm gonna go back. I want to watch all your films. I'm gonna send them to my son. Look what you make films. I'm personally gonna look more into your programs because we might be having to take a trip to the West Coast. Little California love going on. So thank you so much. Where can all of our listeners, where can we learn more about YATC?
Yeah, so Young Actors Theater Camp can be found online either under youngactorstheatercamp.com or campyatc.com. We're on all the socials as at Camp YATC. And I always tell families who are looking into the program, register early because this is a camp that has a lot of pre-production. So we really do in, you know, March, April, and May, we really delve right into the pre-production of it. And we hope that all of our campers are registered by then so that we can develop the program that they're so in need of and that they keep asking for.
So on July 2nd, when the curtain rises and opens, you are ready to go. Oh my gosh, this has been such a joy. I love the theater. I love that my kids love it. And we're gonna learn more about you. And I love it. No canoes, tons of drama, Young Actors Theater Camp. So again, thank you so much for joining me, Shawn. If you want to learn more about Young Actors Theater Camp, check them out online. If you love camp and you want to hear more of the My Camp podcast, you can listen to more where you find your podcasts on Apple and Spotify and all those great places. So I'll see you back here next time here in the Girls HC. I'll save us more for you.
Take a moment to shine.